They kicked me out of first class, dragging my dazed body past wide-eyed passengers, blood trickling down my face. I had imagined this flight a celebration, a chance to feel special as the son of the airline's CEO. But instead, I was a spectacle, a problem to be disposed of. People used to treat me like I was nothing, despite my bloodline and privileges. My father gifted me this first-class ticket to Redwood Tech, a chance to dip my toes into a world where intellect reigned over ignorance. Yet, standing amid luxury, I felt the weight of skepticism. Could I truly belong? As a person of color, I was all too familiar with the dismissive glances and low whispers. It started with a simple request for orange juice, only to devolve into outright hostility from a snide flight attendant, Nancy, who made it clear that my presence was unwelcome. The confrontation escalated quickly. A man's derogatory comment about knowing my place triggered an all-consuming rage in me. Before I knew it, I was met with the brute force of security, ejected from an airplane filled with gasps and smartphone cameras. The injustice was palpable. My dreamy expectations smashed into shards. But it was in that moment of despair that my father shattered the silence with undeniable authority. He stormed in, and within 10 minutes the plane was grounded and a storm of inquiries began. His fury ignited a fierce determination to overhaul the airline's policies, not just for me, but for all disenfranchised voices. Now, as I navigate my recovery, I've learned that scars can be a source of strength. I embrace my journey, rise with purpose, and seek to challenge the misconceptions that once confined me. I invite you to join me in this fight against injustice. Sometimes it takes a single moment, a single voice, to ignite monumental change. Keep your eyes on your own drink, Nancy, the flight attendant, snapped, barely glancing at me as she shoved the orange juice across the aisle. Some of us are working here. What do you mean by that? I asked, bewildered, feeling blood rush to my cheeks. She scoffed, rolling her eyes. Just don't make a scene, kid. You're in first class for a reason, right? Excuse me. I felt the heat rising, a mix of anger and confusion building in my chest. I'm not causing any trouble. I just wanted some juice. Maybe next time, know your place. A chubby man nearby suddenly chimed in, his voice heavy with disdain. You don't just get to demand things because you're seated up here. I swallowed hard, a lump forming in my throat. This wasn't the first time I felt the sting of prejudice, but this felt sharper, more public. I looked at Michael, a fellow passenger, who offered me a supportive nod, but it did little to ease the tension swirling around us. Before I could respond, Nancy poked her head into the conversation. This isn't your corner store. You think this is a charity? Back off or I'll have security escort you out. Why don't you just do your job? I shot back defiantly, my heart racing wildly. Seconds later, I was standing in the aisle, hands gripping the armrest of my seat, as two burly security guards approached. We need you to leave the plane, one said, flat and authoritative. Wait, what? You can't be serious, I gasped, but they were already shoving me towards the exit. A muffled gasp rose from the crowd, eyes wide with shock as blood trickled from my cheek where I'd bumped it against the armrest. As I stepped out into the glaring sunlight, I caught a glimpse of my father rushing through the terminal, fury etched into his features. Who did this? You're all grounded, he thundered, punctuating his authority in a sea of bewildered faces. In that moment, I felt the weight of injustice as sharp as the pain in my body. This wasn't just about me. It was about standing up against a system that enforced silence on those who dared to speak out. The airplane lurched as the security team approached, eyes wide with disbelief from the surrounding passengers who had just witnessed the unfolding chaos. You need to come with us, a uniformed man said curtly, grabbing the protagonist's arm, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. The world shifted in those moments, one moment exhilarated by the luxury of a first-class ticket, the next feeling the weight of scorn and humiliation. His attempts to pour a celebratory orange juice slid into silence as the flight attendant, Nancy, dismissed him with a haughty flick of her wrist. The room buzzed with whispers, some sympathetic, others laced with contempt. He was no stranger to the undercurrents of prejudice, but had hoped, foolishly, that today would be different. As he glanced across the aisle, Michael, an older passenger he'd shared fleeting smiles with, met his gaze. A flicker of connection amid rising hostility sent a shiver down his spine. But then the confrontation erupted. A passenger's cruel words spewed forth like venom. "Know your place." In an instant, the narrative spiraled. Hands grabbed him, forcefully dragging him toward the exit as Nancy's startled expression barely registered. Gasps filled the cabin, and the weight of 1,000 unspoken injustices landed on his shoulders. The sharp realization hit. This wasn't just about him. It was about a systemic problem that had silenced so many for far too long. "Enough," he breathed, a quiet storm brewing within. He swore, in that fragile moment between pain and rage, that this would not go unanswered. "Excuse me, can I get a drink?" The words came out steadier than he felt, cutting through the murmurs of disbelief from the surrounding passengers. T.A. Nancy, the flight attendant, narrowed her eyes, dismissing him with a wave of her hand. "We'll serve you when we have a moment." It struck him then, a flicker of indignation igniting a flame inside. "You're not too busy to serve your first-class passengers, are you?" Even as he spoke, it felt like testing a boundary he never thought he'd confront. The silence from others felt charged, but this time, instead of slinking back, he squared his shoulders, drawing his strength from the shared glances of support. "Don't let them treat you like that," Michael, an older passenger, whispered, nodding in solidarity. Just those few words solidified his resolve. When the confrontation with the other passenger escalated, he could feel his heart racing, but definitely not with fear. The security personnel arrived and it all spun out of control, but clarity settled inside him. He was done being invisible. "I have a right to be here," he said firmly, even as he felt the heft of the situation closing in. The words didn't just express defiance, they signaled his awakening. As he was dragged out, blood trickling down his face, he could see the shock mirrored in the eyes of the passengers, who were beginning to realize they'd witnessed more than just a harassment. It was a wake-up call, and for the first time, he connected with it. Later, he stood alongside his father, the powerful CEO, as the news spread like wildfire. Each decision his father made, from grounding the plane to starting an internal investigation, felt like small victories against a larger injustice. "Change starts here," his father said, eyes blazing with determination. And in that moment, amidst the chaos, he felt less like a victim and more like a catalyst for change. Reclaiming his narrative wouldn't just reshape his story. It had the potential to alter the course for others too. Taste. As the airplane door slammed shut, an uncanny quietness descended upon the cabin, tension crackling like static. Blood dripped from the narrator's face, his body still trembling from the indignity of being forcibly removed from first class. Passengers murmured, their bewildered expressions mirroring the disbelief of a traumatic injustice unfolding. He had looked forward to this trip, worn a suit his father had chosen for him, yet all that remained was a bitter void where his excitement had once lived. Outside, the CEO of the airline, a figure who commanded rooms more than planes, strode into the terminal, eyes aflame with anger. "What happened?" he demanded, disbelief giving way to fury as he surveyed the scene. Within minutes, he had summoned a private meeting with management, the urgency palpable. Tane. Back on the plane, a wave of realization washed over the passengers, now posting on social media as the gravity of what just transpired sank in. Nancy, the flight attendant, once so belligerent, sat pale and shaken, her earlier confidence crumbling into nervous fidgeting. The passengers turned their backs, whispers weaving through the cabin about bias, privilege, and accountability. The narrator, now back in control. What does just